Hey everyone! Welcome to another drawing video with Chris Wharton. I am Chris Wharton, and today I'm going to be doing a little follow-up to my last video on how to draw hands. That video focused pretty heavily on drawing the basic structures of a hand and how to think about those structures while you're drawing a hand. If you haven't seen it yet, you can check it out by going to the show notes of this video. After posting my video on how to draw hands, I realized I may have actually blazed a little bit too quickly through the demonstrations in that video. So in this video, I'll be refining the hands of characters in 2 comic book pages that I'm currently working on, and I'll show you 16 quick demos of how I draw hands. During these demos, I'll be working on refining the structure of and finally inking the hands of characters on a couple of pages for my comic book Venture Cats. If you want to follow along as I create Venture Cats, you can actually follow me on Patreon by going to patreon.com/Chris Wharton. There you can support me as I create Venture Cats and get behind the scenes access for as little as $1 a month. Go to patreon.com/Chris Wharton to find out more. Now, these pages are pretty far along since I've actually taken them through the rough first pass all the way to where I'd normally start throwing down final inks. But I'll go over most of the hands on these pages again, just to confirm the structure behind the sketch, make sure it holds up, and if not, I'll adjust it and ink the hands how I want them to look in the book. You probably noticed that the hands I'm drawing don't have the typical number of fingers, and that's because I made a decision pretty early on to only give these characters 3 fingers and a thumb on each hand. I do this when I design characters that I want to have a more cartoony feel. This probably comes from being heavily inspired by newspaper comic strips like Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes, and Disney and Warner Brothers cartoons when I was growing up. The basic hand structures I went over last time still work with only 3 fingers, but I do have to say that it takes a bit of practice to make 3-fingered hands work and look right. You may need to play with the lengths of the fingers and their width in order to make sure the fingers don't look too long when compared to the palm of the hand. Another thing you may notice is the rounded triangles I'm adding to the base of the fingers to confirm knuckle placement where the fingers meet the palm rectangle. This is an additional step I didn't go over during the last video. Adding this step can be really helpful when trying to figure out where the knuckles should be, when parts of the hand are blocked or partially blocked by other things in the image. Another technique I show here is the stick figure method, where small circles represent the joints and sticks represent the finger segments. This is used to quickly confirm whether placement works using minimal lines, which can be quickly adjusted if the placement is off. Once you like where things are, you can build out the structure using the box method to break down the width of the fingers and the size and shape of the knuckles. Honestly, if you draw a lot of hands, you're going to end up drawing them holding a lot of things. This means there will be a lot of playing with finger placement just to make sure the fingers look like they're holding objects instead of sitting inside of them. Something to keep in mind is that hands are organic. And that means that parts like the backs of the hands and the knuckles are bonier, and other parts like the palms and the pads of the fingers are soft and squishy. Remember that bonier areas retain their shape, and softer parts deform as they bend and press against objects. For example, when the pinky is curled into the palm, like in this example, the outside of the hand retains the planes of the boxy structure, and the inside of the pinky and the palm squish together in interesting ways. Take the time to examine your own hands or your friend's hand for reference when drawing these poses, since they can be kind of tricky. Laying out the structure really helps when you're drawing hands that are only partially visible. You can guess where everything should be without planning it all out, but if you're having trouble, try taking the time to block out the structure and it can help make the difference. It's also something that really helps when drawing hands that are holding bulkier objects, or when you've got characters that are wearing oversized clothing like the one seen here. By the way, I was super inspired and created 9 new t-shirt designs over the past 2 weeks, which I've posted to my TeePublic store. This means my store currently has 24 designs that I've personally created. I also just became an affiliate with teepublic.com, which now lets me find and showcase designs by other awesome artists on my store too. So if I find other designs that I think you guys would love and that fit the themes of fantasy, humor, TTRPGs, and gamer apparel that I currently create for my store, I'll be sure to add them so you can find them there too. If you'd like to check out any of my new designs or some of the designs by some awesome creators on TeePublic that I'm showcasing in my store, just check out the TeePublic link that I've added to the show notes. All right, back to the demos. As I've gone digital with my process, I have to say that the zoom function has been both a blessing and a curse. I think that the good side is pretty obvious, but the downside I'm talking about is that I've found you can really lose your sense of scale when zoomed in, and then forget that what you're focusing on is actually a really small area of a larger piece. When this happens, you can waste time adding a bunch of detail only to zoom back out and realize that the work you put in isn't all that visible. This is why it's important to zoom back occasionally, just to keep that sense of scale in mind as you draw. This is also a good practice when drawing traditionally, but is a bigger issue when drawing digitally, since your artwork is always seen through a window and the entire piece isn't always visible. On the other hand, one of my favorite things about drawing digitally is it's infinitely editable and really easy to try things out on separate layers, to play with the size or placement of your sketches and really fine-tune how things should look before moving forward. This can offer a great opportunity to practice alternate poses. You can always do this when drawing traditionally on paper, but it's better to try sketching out alternate poses on another piece of paper, since paper is delicate and erasing your drawing multiple times can damage it. Either way, drawing multiple variations of any given pose will give you a better sense of what works okay and what takes the body language to an entirely different level. We all have different things that we end up drawing obsessively. For me, it wasn't hands, but drawing faces. I drew faces every chance I got. In my sketchbooks, of course, but also in the margins of all my notebooks and on my napkins at restaurants. When you practice like this, you get to a point that you don't have to think so hard about making that particular thing look right anymore, because the underlying structures are so ingrained that they've become second nature to you. It's at this point that your drawings start to really shine, because you can spare the brain power you were using to remember all those rules to start improving your other techniques, like your storytelling, the themes, and the unity of your drawings. And since we're all attempting to improve our craft all the time, you may not even notice when you've gotten to that point until you've been there for a bit. It's funny how we can always find the imperfections in our own work, and we can always see the ways that our drawings can be improved. It's important not to beat yourself up when you feel like your drawings aren't perfect. Perfection is really only something that's seen in the work of others. Instead of striving for perfection, just practice to improve a little bit at a time and only compare your progress to your own past work. If you keep at it and practice drawing hands like the other stuff you obsessively draw, I promise it'll get easier and easier. I hope you all like these hand drawing demos. If you did, you can let me know by liking this video, dropping me a note in the comments, and subscribing to my channel for more drawing videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.